roll call here in a minute, but is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Yeah, we adopt the agenda.
Seconded.
Okay. Michael, Joycelyn, motion to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? Okay, roll call. I'm happy to do this. Brent, I'm here. Michael, Joycelyn, John, Yummy, Ron. And then the one person who is not present at the moment is Michelle, and she may join us. And when she does, we will add her and announce that.
Brent, she just joined.
Okay, she did. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Good morning.
Morning.
It's a full committee. I appreciate everybody showing up. Just as a way, kind of a prefatory comment or introduction, we have two significant items to consider. The hope is that we will make some recommendation that they can be considered next Tuesday at the full board meeting. I want to assure you or represent to you is that if we act today, that we might not have to have a building committee later in the month, but that might be an error, but let's see what we can get done with the items that we have in front of us today. They're two familiar items to us that we've been over in some sort of detail, but we wanted to pause and be thoughtful about them all. One of them involves Riverside and the other one involves North Oak. And so the minutes from our September 16th meeting are in front of you, are available to you. We can look at them real quickly if anybody sees something that needs to be corrected. Appreciate staff, they're very detailed. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
So move.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. We're now down to the two projects referenced. First one's guaranteed maximum price on North Oak.
So let me tee this up just a little bit for you. As you might remember, and I think we talked about this, and it's one of the reasons why we're meeting at a time that is not our typical time. We put out the guaranteed maximum price for North Oak, and it did come back higher than our target. But the feeling was that there was probably some room to move it back closer to the target. Jim Coulter, as Cody mentioned, Jim Coulter from J.E. Dunn is on the call, and certainly he can help us with a lot of the detail. But a lot of just, quickly what's happening is that supply chain issues, as we've been hearing about in the news, and labor issues and things like that are beginning to potentially affect our pricing. One thing I will say is I was sharing this story, this whole process that we were talking about where we had something that came in and we felt like it came in, about $600,000, $700,000 above target. We weren't happy with that and felt like we might be able to, negotiate that and do a little bit better. I was speaking with Eric Button. He is responsible for the building project in St. Louis County. And they're about 4 years ahead of us in terms of everything, in terms of their process. But he told me, he said if they had a project that came in $600,000 above target, they would have adopted it immediately. He said he hasn't had one project that's come in lower than $1 million above target. So, markets are different, but, Kansas City and St. Louis tend to be the big markets, and realizing our track record has been such that we got sticker shock at 600,000 where he would have seen that as a good thing. I think kind of helps us with, how good this whole process has been up until this point, and that we've just hit a couple of snags due to some outside influence. But with that said, we did go through, Jim from J.E. Dunn worked with all the subcontractors, and we did work on getting the project lower than what it originally came in. And so the motion that we have is approval of recommendation to the full board for work packet 12, which is North Oak, for the total guaranteed maximum price of $6,718,442 to be paid from the Capital Projects Fund, and approval authorizing staff to draft a notice to proceed. This, as I said, this is above target. Jake, help me out with the numbers. How high above target is this?
It's $331,000, 974.
And that amount can be taken from our contingency, still leaving about $700,000 in our contingency, which we feel very comfortable with our two remaining projects that will be enough. There is still a project contingency that's part of this. We lowered it, but there is still a project contingency that's part of this. But there was an exercise that we went through, and I believe we have that. Do we have that chart that shows, is there another screen for this item?
No, there's not, Steve.
Okay. So Jake and Jim, I'd like to hand this over to you at this point to talk about what we did to trim the price. And because I want people to be comfortable with what we're doing, and I want them to understand that I believe we didn't do anything that's going to end up being penny wise and pound foolish, that we're going to end up in having to just immediately 6 years from now go back in and throw $300,000 into the building. I don't think we did anything like that. So Jim and Jake, I'd like to pass it to you to talk a little bit about the exercise and what we did.
Certainly, I'll lead into that, Steve, with that, telling you and the building committee that at times the words value engineering were tossed around, and I want to tell you that I personally take affront to those words. I don't like them. Most of the contractors around us have learned not to use those words around me. So with that in mind, I want to be real clear that as Steve said, we didn't take large chunks of things out. We did things like we had a bid where we economized our HVAC system. One of the bids came in quite a bit lower, about $40,000, and so we looked at that and we did a lot of table work with it. We called the vendors and went forward and little things like that. We did things like doing some a little bit of sign reduction at the target of the monument. We changed the light fixtures. We didn't change them from LED to the regular lights as we're going forward. We just changed a little bit of the pattern themselves. We felt like maybe they were a little too expensive. We did a little bit of we removed the skylights completely, which I'm really happy about. I don't like skylights, but and I don't like them for the reason that sometimes they leak. It's not that I don't like them because they provide great light. That's not it. But they, we economized the elevator cab finishes. We minimized a couple of the light pole issues, so we didn't have to do as much digging. But we're not giving up any light. We're just going to add a head to it instead of having an additional light pole. Those are kind of the things that we went through. It's a pretty good laundry list. We spent almost 3 hours going through this, and Steve was a part of it as well. I really feel confident that these changes that we made are minimal. There are changes to reduce the price. We basically were able to come down $310,000, and that's what made this got us to the $6,718,442. And Jim, do you have any more to add to that?
I would say that we really didn't change any programming whatsoever. It was really all cost optimization is what I like to call it, because Jake really doesn't like that value engineering word, but it's really cost optimization. We looked at other branches because we've got good cost history after we've gone through so many of these bid packages. And we noticed a few things that were a little bit different on North Oak. North Oak is a little different because it's got the multi-level building that we haven't done yet, but we really went back and looked at cost history and worked with the design team and Jake and Steve to really optimize costs and say, hey, this is a little different on North Oak. Can we go back to the way we've done it in the past to really get back down on the cost? I will say overall that, like, big picture, Market has been a little volatile and crazy lately. And most of the areas where we were over our budget were really kind of related to steel. Steel is probably the most unpredictable, the most volatile at the moment. There are some forecasts, out in the future that scrap prices are coming down, which may mean steel starts to come down a little bit, but I still think we always get a better buy as soon as we can make the buy.
Just to add one thing to it, going to the split level design did not increase the cost of the GMP per se. It really, we went with the split level design as a conscious decision to maximize the site conditions that we have. The original North Oak as it stands right now is 15,580 square feet. And when we get done with North Oak, we're going to be 17,000 square feet. So by using the split level design, we were able to take advantage of the situation that we've got and also generate a little bit of additional parking. So.
Can I add a comment, Jake?
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, just to reinforce, so you know.
This is Jim Stuffelbeam, our architect.
Yes, sorry, Jim here. That Jim Coulter and his team at J.E. Dunn, I think they really did a really good job of vetting this and scrutinizing this. We work with a lot of contractors, and a lot of contractors would just look at us and say, well, here's the number, what are you going to do? But man, these guys worked it pretty hard. We had additional meetings outside the ones that Jake mentioned, 2 or 3 meetings that were 2 or 3 hours apiece with J.E. Dunn, and they were asking us all kinds of questions. Can we change this? Can we move this? Can you change the spec on this item? So it got a pretty high level of scrutiny, just so you know, and also to thank Jim and his team for working this pretty hard.
I want to back up for just a second. What Jim Stuffelbeam just described is almost a perfect definition of what the construction manager at risk, the CMR delivery model, is based on what we talked about when we accepted this model. It's not a take it or it's not the design bid build that you have with and the take it or leave it approach that St. Louis County is dealing with, for example. It is a collaborative effort between the design team and the construction team working together, trying to figure out, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we move the wall this direction? Can we go with an underground tank as opposed to detention base? Those sorts of questions that that then don't have to be cost optimized or value engineered out. That it gets designed in the right way from the beginning. And I think we're seeing the benefit of that. So in terms of some numbers, and we can share this, actually, I believe we did share the full list with Brent and Michael and showed them all the choices that we made, what we chose to keep and what we didn't keep. Happy to share that with anybody who would like to see it. But in terms of just hard numbers, the original target was essentially 6.38 million. The GMP now is 6.71 million, which is about a 5% difference. It's almost 5% on the notes. It was like 5.02 or something like that.
Were the questions from the building committee members?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, just going over these numbers, Steve, that you sent out. I just appreciate the due diligence by which this detailed report reflects, and appreciate everybody, you guys, for going into that and just looking this over. And you did a great job, I think, on this. And so I just want to commend you for that. And yeah, I guess the only question I had was on that base bid alternate, the generator.
Yeah.
And so
happy to talk about that. So one of the things that we talked about very early on when we went with the split level was putting in a generator. Particularly, I think Joycelyn made some really important points about that. No, it's not your fault. Really important points. What we discovered, 2 things. As I said a little while ago, we didn't want to do anything that was, we didn't want to do anything that we cut today and then 6 months later had to go in and put in $200,000. Well, actually, if we cut the generator today, we feel like if we decide we really need it, we could probably go in and put it in for about $50,000 to $75,000, something like that. Probably one of those natural gas versions. So I guess what we decided is we have a little bit of a cost issue. We could do a wait and see approach. You know, do we really need this before we put it in? The other thing is, and this certainly made me feel a lot better, is that the elevators themselves today are a lot smarter than they used to be. And so if we were to have a power loss situation, the elevator would have one more cycle before it would quit completely. So people wouldn't necessarily be trapped on the top floor. They would be able to get down. Now, we wouldn't be able to go up and down, I mean, just down one more time,
Right.
but they wouldn't be trapped on the top floor. And so I felt like, okay, that seems like that's a good place for us to start. And if we discover it's an issue, it's a pretty easy fix for us.
My issue is ADA issues. If you have a tornado or power outage, people would be stuck in a multi-level building without a generator. And given Missouri's flooding, tornadoes, power outages, that's a high possibility.
But I think it's one that we can, first of all, there's a tiny bit of built-in redundancy in the elevator itself, which makes me feel comfortable, number one. But then number two, if this does become a bigger issue, I think we can install a generator and it won't be $300,000. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, great.
Any other questions?
Yeah, John, Eleni, I have a number of questions. I'm not familiar enough with the basic design or the changes in design to know if there are ramps also between levels, or is it all related to stairs and elevator?
Stairs and elevators, John.
Okay. Are there any changes to the outside landscaping, irrigation, et cetera?
It's interesting that you should say that, because certainly one of the comments that I made in the meeting is we are not going to eliminate any irrigation. In large part because the irrigation is what helps protect us against mud jacking and keeping our foundations in good shape. But I believe we did, Jake, help me out. I know we did trim like a small landscape area, but it wasn't, I can't remember what it was. There was something we eliminated, but we did not eliminate the irrigation, most certainly. What, do you remember that, Jake?
I think what you're thinking of, Steve, is we talked about the island near the drive-through, and we were originally going to reduce that, and then we talked about it. We ended up not doing it. So, John, I don't believe we took any cuts on landscaping, and as Steve said, we insisted that the irrigation be left.
Okay, thank you. What about signage? I heard a mention of signage in the lead up. What signage is being reduced?
This is the one I'm remembering, and catch me for what I forget, Jake, but we are sort of trimming down the monument sign out by North Oak Traffic Way, and it was a little larger than the original plan was. It was a little larger. We're just decreasing its size a little bit, so it's more, actually it becomes more of a duplicate of the type of sign that we're installing at Lee Summit. So it's almost exactly like the sign that we're going to install at the new Lee Summit branch, and before it was slightly larger. But we still feel like it's going to be, it's going to be much better than what it is right now, which is, you drive by the building, you don't even realize that a building is there. Jake, did I miss anything on that? That was the signage issue, right?
Yeah, that was the basic signage issue. And if correct me if I'm wrong, Jim or one of the architects, but basically the reason why it was a little larger, John, is because we were putting a little bit like a logo on the bottom, and we'd made it a little bit bigger, but the actual library sign and the lit part stayed in. So all we did was reduce. I think we just basically reduced the base a little bit, and we did do it for the ability to basically say, all right, this is what we're doing at Lee Summit. This is what we want to do at North Oak. We're trying to get some sort of a, for lack of a better word, standardization, where when you see a sign, you go, oh, library sign, and it looks almost exactly the same as the other one. So wherever you go, you're seeing that same kind of welcoming, and you're knowing that you're coming into the library.
Yeah, the only other one, Jake, was we had a sign that was separate, standalone, that had its own foundation, and we removed that foundation and applied it to the bench wall. So we didn't get rid of the sign, we just got rid of the foundation.
Okay. Well, we also want them to know it's a Mid-Continent Public Library site also, in addition to knowing it's a library.
Well, the sign's there, John. It's just not as big.
Okay.
And the logo itself is still affixed to the front of the building, as I recall.
It is. At least one, not two.
How much was saved by doing those items that you just mentioned? We don't have any detail here in front of me, at least if it's available.
John, this is Brent. I just emailed you the list.
It's about $14,000.
Yeah, so, and we can get this out to all the building committee members, but it's, there's 27 items that resulted in $310 in savings. And then there's another 30 items for which staff said no. So it's a list of everything that was considered, what was said yes to, what was said no to. And it's pretty detailed and pretty thorough. And we will revisit this at the board meeting next Tuesday. And so we can also maybe provide some additional information or show versions of these so that people are satisfied that it's visible as a library. John, I want to assure you is that there's a clear no that says about eliminating an island with landscaping in it. So it's number
20
on the no list and others. So we have not, I would make a representation, we've not reduced our standards of what it is that we believe are aesthetic values. And so if we go ahead with this project, you won't drive up and say, well, why did this one get shortchanged? Right.
Yeah.
If I recall, I think the sign in Lee Summit, we actually had to get city permission to make it as large as it was because of the way it's configured so that it can be seen coming around the corner. So moving it a little smaller to North Oak is not going to make it too small. We had, from what I recall, it was special permission to make it bigger than usual.
All right.
Okay. One final question. There must have been a reason for putting the skylights in to begin with. The architects evidently must have thought that there were places where the light was not sufficiently bright in those areas. And so is that the case? And And how much are we saving by taking out skylights?
Let me start with this, and then I'll pass it to Jake and Jim. But the initial skylights, if you remember, North Oak kind of has the new North Oak has a pitched roof, and the skylights were going to be essentially on the north side of the pitched roof. But the east side of the pitched roof is a wall of glass. So, I mean, there is a lot of light in this building. I think the feeling is that it would just kind of bring a little bit more natural light into the building, but it's not like, I'll just draw one from your past, John. It's not like our old Lee Summit branch, for example, where, it's built into the side of a hill, or like Riverside, where it's built into the side of a hill and it's completely dark in the back. But, so to me, it felt like it was a belt and suspenders approach in terms of getting natural light. And there's going to be plenty of natural light in this building. But Jake, Jim, and Jim, if you'd like to weigh in, please feel free.
I'll step in on this. John, I argued with the architects from the beginning on the skylights because we got the skylights in Clay Como, and they just, in my opinion, they just didn't do what they said they were going to do. And if we would have put a little bit more glass in, I think we would have gotten just as much light. And that's how my feeling is now. I'm going to echo what Steve said. There's a lot of glass. There's a lot of light coming in. While we may lose a little bit of light, it's certainly not going to be dark in the building. And I think we're in pretty good shape. We saved $35,000 on that decision. So
okay, all right, that's all I need to know. I just wanted to make sure that part had been carefully considered because we're anxious to get a lot more light in than we have had in the past. So thank you. That's fine.
John,
Yeah,
that's
this
line
Jim.
item number 8 on the list.
Yeah.
So,
It's not, I'm sorry, this is Jim. It's not a question of darkness so much. Architects like skylights because they make that connection, indoor, outdoor, natural light. So yeah, we tend to like those. But if they're not on the plate, they're not on the plate. And Jake is right. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. So
Okay, thank you.
it's not a question of darkness. It will not be underlit.
Yeah, I appreciate this. I will say again, though, that I'm satisfied with the amount of work that's been done. And as Michael said, we're grateful that you're going to these lengths to try to save this money. The fact is, we are going to be spending another $300,000 more if this gets approved. And I am anxious for us to have an overall review of where we are in terms of income and outgo in terms of the capital project. And we have not done that. At least they've not done it in the finance committee. Maybe I just am not recalling that it's been done thoroughly and item by item in the building committee. But I'm anxious that be done. I don't think that should hold up this particular effort that's been made, but I think that we are at a point where we need to do that very carefully to make sure that we're balancing income and outgo on the project, on the capital projects.
This is Brent Chalmers. Any other questions from committee members?
Yes, this is Yummy. I have a question.
Yes, Yummy.
I am a little concerned about the price tag. Is this needed? Would you say that the project cannot be completed without this additional amount? And if it were not approved, what would JE Dunn do to complete the project with the current budget?
So from the JE Dunn side, we found a path that got us very close to the original budget, but it started to affect program to a point that we, as a team, didn't think it was appropriate because we did not want to do something different on this library that we've done on other libraries.
I think we would, this is Jim Stufflebeam, we would have to begin looking at reducing square footage. We would have to start looking at program items. For example, one of the items that was considered was display cases. Should we eliminate those from the project? And Steve and staff concluded that no, that's an important part of the community connection and so forth. So that was not eliminated, but we'd have to start looking at those kinds of things. And of course, Steve and staff would have to make some difficult choices. No, it's not impossible. I mean, it could be done, but like Jim just said, you'd have to start looking at some program items and/or square footage.
I think one more thing that's really important to keep in mind too is that it's what we're talking about now is that essentially, well, I mean, we have a set of designs that are ready to be built. I mean, they've been put out to bid, the subcontractors are ready to start working and all of that. In order for us to step back and say, you know, let's trim 1,000 square feet off this building so that we can bring it in at $6.3 million. And I'm just making numbers up. But in order to do that, we're going to have to re-engage our engineers, our architects. We'll probably, I would guess once everything's all said and done, and also considering the volatility in the market, we'll spend more than $300,000 in trying to save $300,000. And that's just, that's my guess today. I mean, in a different environmental situation or economic situation, my recommendation might be totally different, but.
See, we did talk about that as a group reduce the overall square footage, you end up spending more on the redesign than it's worth to try to get to that number. So we did contemplate that.
Any other additional questions or comments?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
Jake, good morning. This is Ron. I just have a very simplistic question that I can handle. With a $300,000 adjustment in price, we're still going to be able to achieve the desired purpose and reliability. Is that right? For example, like changing the light parking lots and internal, we're still going to have the same lighting and equally reliable method of providing the light. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of along Ron's line, but also I want us to keep in mind that these plans were created from numerous community meetings, from numerous analysis of what was going on in the area of need. And so to cut back on a well thought out plan beyond aesthetics and just cost savings would mean to make a decision to underserve a community. And I'm not willing to do that as an individual board member, but our communities all have needs and they all have different needs, and the plans were developed on those needs. It came the pandemic and steel prices going through the roof, but the needs still remain.
Any other questions? I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor say of the motion that's on the screen, I'll just read it out loud. Approval of recommendation to the full board to accept work package number 12, North Oak, for the total guaranteed maximum price of $671,842,442 to be paid from the Capital Projects Fund, and approval authorizing staff to draft a notice to proceed. This would be a recommendation to the full board. If there are additional questions that the committee members have, that would be beneficial. We're not authorizing this project to proceed. We would be authorizing this project to the full board whose action is necessary for us to proceed. So all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
No, this is Yummy. No.
Noted. Thank you, Yummy. Anybody abstain? Michelle, I'm not sure I heard a vote, or if you're there, if you.
Oh, I said aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everybody on, Yummy said no, and the other two people online said yes. I just wanted to make sure I had clarity around that. So the matter is approved. We're going to go to the next item, which is the Riverside recommendation. This has been my quick intro. This has been a much discussed project. As Michelle was overwhelmed, like, you mean this is 7 years? And I think the correct answer was no, I think it's been 8 or maybe not, 8 or maybe 9. Our president kind of sensed that there was a consensus really around the project at the last time that we got together. But we, frankly, we did not have it listed as an action item. And then we wanted to kind of, frankly, we did not know if we would have a consensus when we went into that conversation. So hopefully we're back to where we were when we last talked about it. So I'm going to ask staff if there's anything that they might add or any additional developments. There was a couple of questions during our board meeting that they may or may not have answers to, but I'm going to turn it over to staff.
So I believe I tried to send out some, we've been working on a letter of intent because we figured that the best way to approach Riverside was to start putting things in writing, start trying to get everybody agreeing to things as opposed to trying to remember what was said 7 years ago. And what we did is we really started following kind of the same approach that we did with Grain Valley. So, so our staff, hearing what you all talked to us about and what we've been taking in from the city of Riverside, we put together a letter of intent. Now, this draft, which I tried to send out to you this morning, and hopefully you've seen it, and if not, I think it's in board docs now, and it's certainly being shared on the screen right now. And so what it basically does is it lines out who's the buyer, who's the seller. We are considered the seller in this letter of intent. And basically what it says is that we're going to sell our library property as is to the city of Riverside for $1 million plus $350,000. And those resources are to be used to build a new library located at 4150 Northwest Gateway. It speculates a potential closing on December 31st of this year. There are some additional conditions that the city of Riverside, once we sell the property to them, then the city would lease back our building to us for $1 a year until we move out and we have certificate of occupancy in the new building. That the city always makes sure that there's two-way traffic available into our building, and that we never have to pay for an easement of any sort for our property. And then of course that we make all sort of representations that need to be made. And then in terms of the seller, that their conditions, that they have an unrestricted power, or that the seller has complete and unrestricted power to enter into and execute, deliver, perform, and consummate the LOI. So in other words, they can do this, that they guarantee that there are no leases, contracts, anything that will prevent us from buying the building, and that they will not enter into any agreements that will bind us, sort of in the medium time. And we do the same thing, that we make the same sort of guarantees. One of the things that we will, generally this is a condition of sale. We didn't get this written in here, but we would most likely require a phase 1 environmental study on the property, especially considering that the property used to be that there used to be petroleum gas tanks on there. So we want to make sure that it's completely clean. We believe it is, and the city has told us that, but we would probably put that in as a condition as well. And so this is the letter of intent that we've drafted. I think, as I've said, this is one-sided. We've been drafting this. We have not had city reaction to this, although it's been drafted with the many years of negotiation in mind. So we feel like this isn't there's not going to be tremendous hesitance, we don't think, from the city, although they may put in a couple of other conditions here and there. And so what staff is looking for is essentially for the committee to take a look at this, and then to make a recommendation to the full board to authorize staff to continue working on this letter of intent and bring it back for execution at a later date.
So this is Brent Schondelmeyer. So this reflects the discussions that we've had. Understand this is moving from discussion to transaction, and that we may see different versions of this letter of intent, and we may get a version of it that comes back to us all, which is other than to our liking. This is, can we move to the next step sort of approach? Any questions about the where we are or what this next step might involve?
About this letter of intent, this is Joycelyn. Primarily, this deals with our current property, not the new site.
No, it does include, so if you, what clause is that? It's a paragraph 3. And so what it does is that that part of the purchase price
I got it.
includes the acquisition of the property on 4150 Northwest Gateway.
Okay. So it covers both. Thank you.
We're not selling our current location without committing to a new one.
That was my concern.
Right. Yeah. Paragraph 3 is probably the most important paragraph. So anyway,
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other updates or additional information from staff?
Jim, Jake, anything to add?
No, only that after the last meeting, we reached out to the city to be sure that they were still interested after this amount of time, and they indicated that they had just had a conversation with their city council. I mean, the important thing to understand there is the city council that, you know, we would be entering into a deal with now is a different city council than proposed this some time ago. And they indicated that, yes, the city council is very much still interested in this. This is one of their priority items to have.
Any questions in the?
I'm sorry, there was one other thing, which was, there was a question last time about sidewalks.
Yes.
And the city did indicate that in their long-term plan, they want to put a sidewalk over on that side of the property. They have, obviously, you know, the property we're talking about, I think we talked about this last time, is across the street from the community center and City Hall. And they're intending sidewalks on both sides of that street.
Thank you. Any questions from our committee members online? Any questions from committee members in the room? I'm going to go ahead and call the questions. All in favor of recommending this letter of intent, this draft letter of intent to the full board for its consideration, say aye.
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 Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Michelle, I want to note today's what, October 13th, 14th, 15th, 14th? 14th.
I know, right? How many years has this been?
That would require higher level math, but so we'll figure it out. So anyway, I want to express my appreciation on this because prior board said no and for good reasons. And I think the current, I'm anticipating a favorable response to the full board, but we're at a, hopefully this will be well received in some ways that, you know, engaging with the city government like we did with Green Valley. You know, we've engaged in land transactions with private individuals and with public entities, and each one of them is its own adventure. And so we hope that this one is a successful adventure. So anyway, so I think that includes Riverside. I think there's the next item is a construction update, the status. And I turn it over to staff.
Right. So we'll just go through the presentation real quickly. So again, as you can see on the placemat, in terms of where we are, you know, our JE done, just remembering how it works. The projects that are highlighted in black are completely closed out. The projects that are green are essentially with JE done. The projects that are in white are future work. But with that said, Green Valley is now in the process. I mean, we've acquired the property and the design team is starting to work on Green Valley. Of course, we just did the GMP from North Oak. So North Oak is about to go into the green. And that pretty much is just leaving us with East Independence as the only project that's still sort of really hanging out there. As far as the big project, of course, we kind of did the detour on Riverside. So I guess it's East Independence and Riverside, I guess, are really what we're talking about, are still kind of on this list.
Colburn needs to be moved into the block.
Pardon?
Colburn needs to be moved into the block.
It may not be fully closed out.
Okay.
That's probably the situation there.
Okay.
There may be some paperwork that's still pending. So
Okay.
so if you're looking at this down at the bottom where it's 84.5, 84.5, those two columns, the JE done current, JE done 1125. Remember, the 1125 is our target, current is our GMP, and these numbers have been holding at 84.5 million, with differences from savings, tapping contingencies, things like that. That's how those numbers end up balancing. But as of right now, our hard costs are still on target, exactly on target with what we've been planning with $1 million in contingency. Of course, that 1 million is going to go down to 700,000 because of what we just decided to move out. but still 700,000 in contingency. And so that's, just looking at it quickly, we're still pretty much where we need to be. If we go to the next slide, this will be just sort of some updates. This is Woodneath. And actually, I was at Woodneath, when yesterday, day before yesterday, I was at Woodneath. And this is what it looked like there, except more puddles of water. There's been, I think I was talking with the superintendent, and I think they said that 68 weather days at Woodneath, and it's just playing havoc in terms of what they're doing. But anyway, up in the upper left-hand corner, that's the auditorium. You can see all of the cladding is in place. So it's looks like a building now. You can see on the upper right-hand corner, the parking lot is graded, sub-base is in, kind of, getting pretty close to the asphalt. The lower left-hand side, you're beginning to see the colonnade with the, actually on the, you can see the colonnade and the sidewalk connection from the historic house on the left. In the middle is the plaza that's between the two buildings, and they're putting the concrete in there. And then the colonnade on the sort of there in the middle. And then in the lower right-hand corner, that's actually the outdoor amphitheater, the 100-seat amphitheater. And so what you're looking at there is you're looking at a bollard to keep cars from driving down the stairway. But then the other thing that you're seeing is those little circles. Essentially, those are the foundations for the bench seats for that. And then the bollard, if you follow that all the way down those stairs, is a small performance or speaking stage is what that is. So taking advantage of the natural contour of the land to create that space. The other thing that's happened at Woodneath, just an FYI, we have the main drive is closed. So the main drive off of Flintlock is closed right now. Part of that is because the circle drive that's right in front of the house, a lot of that got damaged during construction, just heavy trucks coming in and things like that. It was always part of the process to repair that at the right time. And it ended up that this week became the right time. And so the circle drive is closed. They've actually taken out all that asphalt down to base, and they're starting to relay that. My guess is they're relaying that in conjunction with this parking lot that's also being prepared. So if you happen to be driving to Woodneath, visiting Woodneath, in the next couple of days, again, assuming that we don't have any more torrential downpours, you'll have to enter off of 90th Street as opposed to the main drive off of Flintlock for about a week. So that is Woodneath. Next slide. This is Woodneath inside. And so you can see in terms of the inside, a lot of the finishes are starting to come into place. Ceilings, floors, walls. In the lower left corner, you can see this is one of the restrooms. And so you can see the tile is in place and all the plumbing, of course. The picture that's in the bottom row toward the middle, I believe that's the stage. When I was out there on Tuesday, I was trying to get in the building, but everything was so muddy that I didn't want to track mud everywhere. So I didn't. So I decided not to get into the building. Otherwise, I'd be a little bit better oriented on this. But as you can see, finishes are coming along very quickly, and might be a little bit further ahead if we didn't have so many weather days. But the building itself appears to be buttoned up. Jim Coulter, is that correct? Is the building pretty much completely enclosed at this point?
Completely enclosed. I think the only thing we're lacking is really the sliders. But yeah, all the envelope is enclosed right now.
So once that happens, it starts moving pretty quickly. Next slide, please. This is Blue Ridge, and I'm hoping to get out to Blue Ridge this afternoon. This is a lot different from when Michael and I couldn't get our feet up because
the sticky floors.
The sticky floors, yeah. It's looking a lot different from there. But It really has, at this point, it has been turned over to staff. We are building shelves and we are getting ready to do our move in. But you can tell
That looks great.
it looks completely different.
Completely
Different building from what it looked like before. And that's the stained block that we did. Those, you may or may not remember, if you're looking at the picture in the upper right-hand corner, you can sort of see that brown band. That brown band is brick. And that brick was actually what was the entire facade of the building before. And you know, creating this gray stain band really does help. It really did give it sort of a new look. But see, we've got our display cabinets in, our carpet in, our service desk in, and like I said, our staff's actually commissioning the building right now. So we should be in there very soon, very soon. This is Green Hills. And you can see that it started moving really, really quickly. You can see all the structural steel is up. Maybe not all the structural steel is up, but much of the structural steel is already up and moving along quite quickly. So my guess is that we may have lost some weather days at Green Hills as well, but you know, it started later, so it's not as far behind right now. But I would say we're probably marginally still on target here, but if it keeps getting wet, we might start to slide a little bit. But it's moving right along. Jim Coulter, anything interesting to report on Green Hills?
You know, I think we're scheduled for a late summer turnover on Green Hills. The steel is all up now. I think we're gonna start working on the metal deck for the roof, and studs will start going in next week. We're a little bit ahead of where we thought they would be, so it is tracking well right now.
I made Jim say that. I didn't want to say that. I heard that they were a little bit ahead. I didn't want to say that. I wanted to make him say that. And do we have another slide? I was thinking we might. Yeah. Okay, so this is Lee Summit. And you can see Lee Summit is, there's a lot going on at Lee Summit. So basically what's happening there, of course, remember, we're adding about 5,000 square foot, give or take, to the north side of the building. And so that's what you're seeing. I mean, where we've taken out all of the brick, reinforced the ceiling so it didn't fall down, of course, and then building the additional 5,000 square feet out. That is not a moat. We are not installing a moat. It again, it's just all of the fun that we've been having with weather. But eventually that will all get dried out and we'll get that installed. We may, I don't know this for certain. I really don't know what the schedule is, but my assumption is we're probably a little behind because of the weather and where where the weather's been hitting during the construction phase. This is where you really do need it to be dry and it's just not cooperating. So, but moving right along.
Do we have any concerns from the community about the ability to access the other businesses in that area? Because it will change the entrance there.
Jake, I know you and I were talking not long ago, or I was on a call and you had mentioned something about the parking lot and business access and stuff like that. And do you have any update on where we are with the parking lot and access to the Summit Shopping Center?
Well, we unfortunately, because of some of the weather and things like that, we are a little bit behind, as you said, from the parking lot viewpoint. I haven't yet to discuss this with Summit, but it's not looking like we were originally planning on opening that up in late November. We were hoping to be done with all the paving and the asphalt, and that's probably not going to happen. So I'm going to have to go back to Summit and talk to them because I'd really rather they not drive through our construction site because there's so many accident issues, liability issues, all that kind of stuff, and it's just, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on utility wise in that parking lot. I was really surprised when I went over that, but that's the construction part. But once we're done, the entrance will be improved. It won't be a raceway anymore. but you're still going to be able to go through and everyone's going to be able to come in like they're used to. It's just going to take a little bit longer than we had originally expected. Did I answer your question, Jocelyn?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
So I think our next slide just kind of quickly summarizes where we are with all the projects. So last month, in the month of September, we did the official closing on the Green Hills property. Just FYI, I did actually call Platte County this week or last week and made sure that they were registering the fact that we now own the property and because we're a government entity, then, you know, they don't need to send us a tax bill anymore. And they were happy to make sure that they got the GIS system and everything updated and getting that heads up. But that happened September 7th. And then the GMP for North Oak, we got the original version of that in September, which of course we've been reworking. And then we got the certificate of occupancy, the full certificate of occupancy for the Woodneath house on September the 8th. Next slide. This month is the Blue Ridge substantial completion, which was October 1st, and that's when it got handed over to us. For us to commission, build shelves and all of that work. And then October 12th, we got the GMP for North Oak, and then of course brought that to you all today. The next slide. We are targeting a soft opening for Blue Ridge at the end of November. And so we'll see how that works. And then the closing of North Oak on November the 29th, assuming everything moves the way we need to. And so that will close the building then, and then we'll just start working on demo and construction. And then of course that does assume that the full board approves the GMP and all of that. So I think that's the update.
This is Brent Chummer. Any questions on any of the projects?
The sign off Flintlock at Woodneath, where does that stand?
When I was there Tuesday, the foundation was completely finished. So it's there. It's ready for installation. But the foundation for the sign is installed.
Okay, when will the sign be installed?
I'm not sure. Jake or Jim Coulter, any ideas?
I think very soon. So as soon as the masons wrap up the colonnade, they're going to go over there to hit the sign. So they'll do that before they leave the site. So really soon.
Okay, it might be well during the closing of the Circle Drive to have a temporary sign, making sure people understand that that's the entrance. It's not apparent at the present time.
Well, right now there's actually a big road closed sign in front of the entrance, because at the point of the entrance. So, but as soon as the road closed sign goes away, we still have the little blue library directional signs, which I know aren't great, but that's all we could get through the city of Kansas City. But based on what Jim Coulter's saying, my guess is by the time we're finished reconditioning the Circle Drive, that monument sign will probably be in place or pretty close.
Okay, on Riverside, has our attorney reviewed the item that we approved earlier, and is he involved in drafting and negotiating the instrument?
Phil has not been involved in looking at this. At this point, we were going to provide this to the city of Riverside. We've drafted this. We were going to provide it to the city of Riverside. We're sure their attorney is going to look at it, but before we brought it back, we would run it by Phil at that point. One thing that I want to make sure that people understand, because I think sometimes people forget, is that part of what, Jake's not an attorney, but Jake's primary duty with the Army before he came here was as a contracts officer. I mean, he's actually very good at doing these sorts of things. I know the first couple of documents that I had Jake draft, I had Phil look at it and he said, I can't I can't do anything with this. He said it's ideal. So we're going to continue to use Phil, but I think on things like this, but leaning on Jake's experience and then having Phil check it at the back end, I think is probably a better use of our resources.
Okay, it occurred to me that would it be appropriate to have a closed session of the board on the Riverside issue, or are we just going to keep it in the open session?
John, I'll provide an answer. I mean, if they come back with a counter to what it is that we think that the spirit of the endeavor is, then we probably would need to go into closed session in the same way we went into closed session for Green Valley to sort of say, well, there's additional considerations that are of importance to the board. So if it's going along smoothly and the like, frankly, it's refreshing that public bodies can do these things in public. And to the degree that we need to go into closed session, we would take that advice and do so appropriately. The Missouri state law, I try not to practice law, but it doesn't require you to be in closed session to deal with real estate transaction. It provides you the opportunity if you choose to do so. So I don't think we're to the point. We're reflecting our desires and intents and values, and we wait to hear back from them. And if we hear something different, then we maybe have to do that. So I hope that we have a timely response from Riverside is what I would sort of say, is because we committed to them to kind of work this through by the end of the year. And we frankly have done, my feeling, our part. Yep. And now it's really on them to come back and decide whether it still meets with their interests and desires.
So as far as you know, there is nothing in this document that we approved that would be a surprise to the governing body at Riverside, should they be online or in any way privy to this document. There's nothing that they would be surprised about by reading about it in the press or hearing about it online, correct?
Staff are shaking their head and saying yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, also, we're actually like in open meeting right now, so they
Well,
will be able to get to it already.
I'm aware of that, but it's a different level of attention when it goes to the full board is all I'm saying.
Sure. Now, this is, I mean, what's in there, other than maybe if there's a couple of minor details in there they might want to quibble about or anything they might want to add. This is the agreement that we've been discussing with them for about a year now. So it should be, in principle anyway, it should be exactly the thing.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm not concerned about it being in open. In fact, I'm pleased about that, but I just didn't want us to be doing anything that would in any way surprise the governing body of Riverside.
My thought is, Mr. Brenchon, that they would be pleasantly surprised that we finally got around to kind of act on their interests, because they were the initiating party at the outset. So.
Yeah, John, Michael here. I agree with what Brent said. It's not going to be a shock to them. I guess we've come a long way at Riverside, and just it's a pleasant and refreshing thing to actually be here at this place, and so it's good.
Yeah, I can testify to the long time part.
I know.
Thank you.
Ron?
Yeah, I had a question maybe directed to our architect. With respect to Woodney's, this is a kind of insignificant matter, but the white fencing I find really charming and so inviting in light of the house. But then with the very contemporary style of the additions, is that fencing? Is there any thought about that?
In terms of adding fencing or changing
retaining
something?
it, or how well it blends in with the additions, which are maybe a different style than white fencing and the mansion.
Well, yeah, and that comes about from a combination of historical setting and modern library. But yeah, early on during the original library construction project, that was discussed. And I believe, Steve, you may have to correct me, but I think the historic pres folks wanted the fencing maintained. And that was our desire too.
That's the answer I was hoping for, so thank you.
I think the community wanted the fencing to remain as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually become sort of the branding and identification of the property, and we've extended it. We've actually added to it since we bought the property.
Now that fencing is not original historical fencing, but
but it blends in so perfectly. I think it's great.
Right.
But with that said, I mean, if you see all the old, like the legacy pictures of the Woodneath house, there is a wooden fence that's around the circle drive right in front of the house, and that's what it was meant to mimic. So,
Any other questions on anything? We have other business listed. I'm not sure there's other business to be shared or discussed.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything. Jake, do you have anything?
No, I do not. Thank you.
I maybe expressed a hope or desire. Do you think we will need I'm asking staff, a meeting 2 weeks from now?
You know, the only reason that I could see right now that we would need is if for some reason the board rejected the GMP and we had to figure out a plan B, or if the board rejected the letter of intent and we needed to figure out a plan B. That's the only thing Jim, Jake, I mean, we don't have anything else pending. There's not like another GMP that's on the horizon.
Correct.
That's correct.
All right. Any other comments from the committee members? First go to online.
Yes, from a finance committee point of view, when is the finance committee, Steve, is scheduled to review the finances of the capital program?
Well, John, I was actually getting ready to send you an email on this, and according to my notes, we did review this in January, a year ago. We did have a full review on the capital replacement plan. But the next, and so we can, and so I'm going to send you what I've been putting together in terms of that meeting. But the next meeting of the finance committee would be the first Tuesday in November, if we held. No, I'm sorry, first Thursday in November, right?
Thursday.
First Thursday in November, if we held to that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Thank you.
Michelle, Yummy?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. That was one of the two of you, but anything from the other? Okay. Anything from anybody in the room?
Good job.
Okay. Take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.